But let's make a turn. Let's take a turn, man. I gotta get my guy up here because look, hey Pat, look, I know you're gonna come. We're gonna bring you in, right, Pat? But I was about to get out of pocket. I'm glad you came in here when you came in. Woo-wee. Hey y'all, get ready, take a sip, bring your pens out, get your notepads ready. We about to get some science with my guy Patrik. No C Walker. I'm dropping science. Pat, boy, I was. Let's bring you in right though, man. We got Patrik No C Walker of DallasCowboys.com joining us once again for the scientific method. And today we're going to talk about guys who we think can break rank. But before that, man, hope you had a smooth, that's the word I've been using, a smooth holiday, a little break. Ain't blow no fingers off or nothing like that. Ain't have no backup Terry moments, nothing like that. You was straight.
Man, listen, I don't really do the fireworks thing anymore.
Okay.
I think that ended for me with JPP. So yeah, I'm good. I hope everybody came through the holidays safely.
Yeah.
Anybody who dealt with the fireworks and whatnot, I hope it was safe. I hope it was fun for you and your kids, and I hope no one made the idiotic decision, which seems to be an annual thing, to fire guns in the air. Because keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, bullets that go up have to come down. So let's end that tradition, because that's a very unsafe one, and it's actually taking some lives. So keep that in mind. But as far as the fireworks go, yeah, I'm not into that anymore. I'll go watch them.
Yeah.
Like I'll go downtown, be it downtown Dallas, downtown Irving, downtown Frisco. Like I'll go watch them. But as far as me lighting them off, nah, man, my PTSD from being on the block, that kind of. Yeah, it's too much going on. Too much.
Yeah,
loud noises, man. Loud noises.
I said that yesterday. I said, you got to kind of, take these loud noises in consideration, because it could be fireworks. It could be something else.
That's what I'm saying. And often where we're from,
yes,
it's
something
it could go either way. Yeah. So it's just like, nah. And typically, to be honest with you, and we'll get into Cowboys here in a quick second, but the 4th of July, back when I was younger, in the environment that I was brought up in, we actually didn't go outside on the 4th of July because you couldn't discern which from which. Like, was it fireworks? Was it the other thing? And you don't want to get caught up slipping. So no, I'm good.
Well,
I'm good. But I hope everybody was safe.
Yeah, we had to travel far to get real fireworks. There's legitimate laws up there. Here in Texas, I went around a corner and got some legit fireworks, and I didn't have no backup Terry moments. So it was pretty cool to do that.
No, but see, in Georgia, where I'm from back home, they were illegal in Georgia. I don't know if they're legal now because I haven't purchased them in a while. And, of course, I haven't been home to purchase them in a while. But we used to have to drive to South Carolina. Yep. So we had to drive across the bridge. Yeah, we had to. When we were in Savannah, we had to go across the bridge. At that point, it was the Talmadge Bridge, and now it's the Savannah Bridge. Had to go across the way to South Carolina, get us some fireworks, bring them back to the block, and then set them off. But, again, that's been a long time ago. You see the gray in my beard. I'm old. We don't do that no more.
Yeah. Get on him about his age, not me, man. He get on me all the time about my age, man.
Man, listen, I'm gonna say this about age. For those that think age is an insult, those that think age is the insult, you have to get to this age. Like, this is an achievement. Whatever the age might be, I'll be 43 in a couple of weeks. Whether I was 35, 23, 55, 63. To still be here breathing is an accomplishment, an achievement, and it's a blessing. So by all means, please stop thinking that calling people old is an insult. If anything, if you know anything about anything, it's actually a compliment, because it took a lot for us to remain where we are right now and to continue to breathe and draw air when so many people, unfortunately, did not make it to this point. So by all means, call me old. I'm glad I was old. This was the goal when I was 10 to make it to 40. My goal when I'm 40 to make it to 50. Hey, call me old. That just means I'm winning.
You know what I call that?
Yes, science.
Science, baby.
Let's go, baby.
That's science, man. All right, look, today's show, Pat, is about some guys. I hit you up, and I was just thinking about it. Like, who are some guys that I think can potentially break the rank or be in contention to push some of the guys in front of them, right? And breaking the rank is not necessarily a bad thing sometimes, right? If you can shake some things up, if there's a person in your organization excelling to the point where it's causing some chaos in that at the top of the rank, right? Like, hey, look, we might have to have the guy down here mopping the floors. We might have to bring him up and make these hot Cheetos, like, You know what I'm
Hot
saying?
Cheeto, what a snack on.
We might, if y'all want to talk about, go check out Flame It or
Yeah.
Flame It Hot or whatever it was. But seriously, there's some guys here in Dallas, some players that I wanted to ask you guys. I wanted to ask Pat if they have the potential to break the rank and push themselves up the depth chart. And I'm coming out fired with this
Let's
one.
do it.
I'm coming out fired with this one, man.
Unload. Let's go.
Jalen Tolbert
Mm-hmm.
and Simi Fehoko.
I've
heard,
you did come out fire. You did. You did.
I've heard a few Cowboy fans saying they think or they want one of these dudes to push Gallup down the list and break the rank. Are they legitimate contenders to do that?
No.
Yeah.
And I'll qualify it as such. When you're talking about Michael Gallup, you're still talking about a former 1,000-yard receiver who last season was returning from a torn ACL, and he didn't return in December where he would have had more time to rehab and recover and get back to his dominant ways. He returned after about 4 games, and it took a while for him. He had up and down, so he had a flash and then not so much, and then you have a flash and then not so much, and then you look at what he was able to do against the Rams in Los Angeles, for example. That play that we're talking about, that sideline twinkle toes play. See, that tells me that the real Michael Gallup is still in there.
You in there?
He's in there. He might need a little bit more time, or at that point might have needed a little bit more time to kind of get back to prime form. And he and I had plenty of conversations over the course of last season. And at a certain point, I dare I say as early as maybe early November, it really was not a physical thing with Michael Gallup at all. It was 100%, or at least 99.999% a mental thing with him. He was just not playing Gallup football because he was afraid that he would make the wrong move, make the wrong cut. He'd come down the wrong way, and then he re-tears the ACL. Keep in mind, that was the first major injury of his entire football career. So when you suffer something like that, it takes a while mentally to come back from that, no matter who you are. But he's not OBJ in the capacity of he's not been through that before.
Yeah.
So he didn't necessarily know how to get over that hump mentally. So I believe the prime Michael Gallup is still there. He looked great in OTAs. He looked great in minicamp. Of course, yes, they were in shorts. Things are going to fire up when they put the pads on here in a couple of weeks in Oxnard. But I think rumors of Michael Gallup's demise are greatly exaggerated. Now, does that mean that Simi Fehoko and Jalen Tolbert don't have enough, or don't have the juice or the potential to push the needle? Yes, they both do. But right now, it's not Simi Fehoko and Jalen Tolbert versus Michael Gallup.
Mm-hmm.
It's Simi Fehoko versus Jalen Tolbert, and it's Michael Gallup versus Michael Gallup. I think that's the better way to look at it, because as long as Michael Gallup wins against himself mentally, in his, what I believe is going to be his real return from a torn ACL, then you'll see the 1,000-yard receiver take note again, especially with Brandon Cooks on the field, CeeDee Lamb now operating in that WR1 role. But when it comes to Jalen Tolbert and Simi Fehoko, I don't think that they should place their bullseye on Michael Gallup. I think that's a bit too ambitious when you look at both of their histories in the NFL. Jalen Tolbert coming off of what everyone, including himself, has labeled a disappointing rookie season, where he could barely get on the field, let alone he could barely get on the active game day roster, let alone on the field. And then you look at Simi Fehoko, who was the dominant wide receiver in last year's training camp. He has a lot of history with both Cooper Rush and Dak Prescott, but injury kind of derailed that season. So he's trying to show that he can be the definitive WR4 in 2023. And that's the role that Jalen Tolbert is trying to get as well. But to say that those two will push Michael Gallup out of WR3,
yeah,
I don't see it. I don't see it.
I think with Michael Gallup, we are remembering, or we have what's it called, revisionist history, right? Where I don't think people remember that he was actually good after he came back from his, what was it, calf situation he had as a wide receiver 3, by the way. Like I think people were upset that he wasn't putting up wide receiver 2 or 1 numbers when he had Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb in front of him in 2021. Like, let's be real. Lamb and Coop were the guys. Gallup had to fall. He had to fall in rank, right? And he did that. Yes, he didn't put up these crazy numbers, but when he came back from his calf, go look at when, who was it? I think both Lamb and Cooper were out. Gallup put up good numbers and played well in that Las Vegas Raiders game. Gallup shined when he was against the Saints. He still was making Gallup plays. But I think a lot of people are expecting or were expecting at that point Gallup to be 2019 when he was the wide receiver too. He wasn't, and he's not anymore. He's the third guy. And I think if you can put your brain and wrap that around Michael Gallup being the wide receiver 3, you can easily come out of this saying, oh, yeah, he could be one of the better wide receiver 3s in this league. I'm not asking Michael Gallup to be my top guy or even number 2 guy anymore. So, for my guy Toxic in there, I think what you're doing when you say he hasn't been this or that since 2020 or 2019, I think you're wrong. He got hurt in week 1 in 2021. He was balling, by the way. Against the Buccaneers. He was balling. Got hurt. And then he came back, and he still was, I think, a solid wide receiver for you with Amari Cooper, with CeeDee Lamb in the fold, and then he tore his ACL. I'm sorry, he tore his ACL. You want me to get mad at him for doing that in 2021?
Right, like I don't understand. And furthermore, and absolutely every single one of your points are valid. And keep in mind that in the first year post Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup got dropped into a situation where he had to be more, but wasn't physically ready to be more. So it was kind of the perfect storm of negative variables, put it that way, working against Michael Gallup. But now here he is coming into 2023. He's much farther removed, nearly 2 years removed from a torn ACL. He's in a better mental space. They go and get Brandon Cooks, which is obviously going to be your WR2. But then at the same time, what that does, the presence of Brandon Cooks and CeeDee Lamb being the definitive WR1, that frees up Michael Gallup to play freely, because now he goes into every game knowing that, hey, I don't have to put up 150 receiving yards and 2 or 3 touchdowns. I'm going to try, but at the same time, I don't have to put that pressure on myself. And as a player, that allows you to play more freely. That allows you to play fast football and just play based on muscle memory, and instead of saying to yourself, well, I have to go out there and hit this number in order for everyone to understand my impact. That's not going to be the case. And I also think people need to understand that because the Cowboys now are back in a situation where they have a 3-headed hydra at wide receiver, CeeDee Lamb's not always going to be the one that puts up 100 yards receiving. 1 week it'll be CeeDee Lamb. The next week it'll be Brandon Cooks. The next week it'll be Michael Gallup. That's by design. It's supposed to be that way. So yes, you're going to see games where Michael Gallup explodes and goes off, and then the next game he might only get 30, 35 yards. But then you look over at his compatriot, Brandon Cook. He had the 130-yard game, and CeeDee Lamb had the 75-yard game. Okay, now let's go to the next game. Well, CeeDee Lamb went off for 150 and 3. And then Brandon Cooks only had 30, and Michael Gallup had 45. The fact is, the Cowboys are trying to keep it unpredictable. They're trying to make it where no secondary can key in on any one of their receivers, because then you got to mix in a guy like Schoonmaker, Jake Ferguson, Peyton Hendershot. You got Tony Pollard. You got Deuce Vaughn back there. So the Cowboys have a perfectly designed situation for all involved, especially Michael Gallup, someone who just really needs to get over that mental hump. And one great way to help him get over the mental hump is to be able to look him in the face and say, you don't have to be that guy every game. Just be that guy on the game that we tell you to be that guy in.
Yeah, and there's multiple conversations you can have with Gallup. Like, don't get it twisted. No one's removing the pressure that Michael Gallup has on him to perform, especially obviously given the extension that he got and the role that he's going to play. In 2023, you need 3 receivers. That's just the way. That's just the way it is. So he's still going to have a significant role.
Real quick, to my guy asking, what did the 3-headed monster at wide receiver get you in the past? Would have gotten you farther if you had Dan Quinn as a defensive coordinator when you had that 3-headed wide receiver. Well, so revisionist history continues.
You never had the 3-headed monster in the playoffs.
That's my point.
When have you had it? In 20, when there was the playoffs, 2018, there was.
What'd you say? Still revisionist history.
Revisionist history. I mean,
people remember what they want to remember.
They remember,
and not what disproves their point.
They make things up. In 2021, you didn't have it. Like, Gallup tore his ACL, and he wasn't available in the playoffs. Last year, there was a 1-headed monster. That's really much all you had at wide receiver. And then 2020 didn't make the playoffs. So you know, there's.
And who came in 2021?
CeeDee Lamb, right?
2020
CeeDee Lamb.
When did your defensive coordinator, your current defensive coordinator,
Dan Quinn? Well, yeah.
I mean, so to my point, once again, when you had that three-headed monster at wide receiver and your offense was just firing on all cylinders, and Dak Prescott earlier in that year, that particular year, was in the conversation for league MVP, who was your defensive coordinator? Was your defense the same as it is now? Was Michael Parsons around? Had Donovan Wilson already become Dono that we know? Was J-Ron Kearse here? Was Malik Hooker here? The list goes on and on. Was Damone Clark here? So, again,
they were there, but they weren't what they
are.
No,
but when
now.
I said was Donovan Wilson the Dono that we know as an example. Yeah. So defensively, this is an entirely different team than when you had the three-headed monster of Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup and a first-year CeeDee Lamb for the most part. So I say all of that to say revisionist history. If we're going to have the conversation, let's have the full conversation, not just pieces and pockets of the conversation that make your point taste good, because it's just, let's not be conveniently let's not have a convenient memory. Let's put it.
I broke down the amount of games they played. I don't even think they played a full season together when they were here for 3 years. I think it was 2020, 2021, and that's it. Really, 2 years. So they didn't even.
William Burney, I do agree at this point with everything that's on the table. No more excuses.
Yeah, I mean, we all agree with that. The team is ready to go, but he comes in here all the time and says that. But that's neither here nor there. Let's get to the second part here, man. Jabril Cox and DeMarvion Overshown. Is he a legitimate contender to break rank and push what you say right now is Jabril Cox, who was a linebacker 3? Is he potentially on a not say chopping block because that's harsh.
Yeah, no.
But is DeMarvion Overshown a contender to jump Jabril Cox?
Yes, he is. And that's not to say Jabril Cox is not on the right trajectory right now, because I've hopped on this show and I've hopped on other shows and I've said it in my pieces as well on DallasCowboys.com. And my assessment of Jabril Cox in OTAs at minicamp, he looks the part right now. And prior to this offseason, he hasn't looked the part. Something is clicking with him. Now, the difference between this battle versus the one we just talked about at wide receiver with Simi, Jalen, and Gallup is that Gallup has stripes on the wall. Jabril Cox doesn't have NFL stripes on the wall right now. Much like Jalen Tolbert, Jabril Cox struggled to get on the actives list last year. He struggled to get onto the field last year. And then when he got onto the field, a large part of that was special teams until there was injury at the linebacker unit, which kind of forced them to play him. And then he kind of had more downs than ups, had some ups, but more downs than ups. So I'm still a believer that Jabril Cox's potential is absolutely there, but not entirely dissimilar from Michael Gallup. Guess what? The guy tore ACL, but he's farther removed from that now than Michael Gallup is. So I expect, and Jabril Cox expects this of himself, that this has to be viewed as the most pivotal year of his young NFL career. But because he doesn't have the stripes on the wall to hold off anyone like Gallup has the stripes on the wall to say, hold on, before you start talking about these younger guns, because Gallup is not old. He's still a young gun himself. But before you start talking about some of these younger guns coming in and potentially taking my seat, look at, what I've done and look when the last time I did it. With Jabril Cox, you can't say that. He can't say that. He has to basically completely get himself together as early as yesterday, because DeMarvion Overshown, the team is very excited about him. They're also excited about Jabril Cox, but Overshown, they love his flexibility. And when you're looking at both of them, Cox and Overshown, they both are similar in that they're fantastic coverage linebackers. So Jabril Cox has that working in his favor, because that's something that gives him a bit of an edge over a Damone Clark and a Leighton Vander Esch in that capacity. But Overshown presents that as well as a former safety out of Texas. So also throwing in the fact that Overshown has more flexibility, more versatility. They're looking at moving him to different places that maybe they're not seeing that role for Jabril Cox just yet, or at least I can say that with my own two eyes, I have not seen them trying to deploy that type of versatility with Jabril Cox that I think that they're going to start from day one with DeMarvion Overshown. So long answer short, yes, DeMarvion Overshown absolutely has a chance to kind of overtake Jabril Cox in some capacity, but it's not going to be easy based on the version of Jabril Cox that I've seen this offseason. So training camp will tell all once they start going full speed with those pads on. But as it stands, yeah, I mean, Jabril Cox is on the right trajectory, but I'd be lying if I sat here and said that Overshown doesn't have a shot. He absolutely does.
Yeah, Overshown is so intriguing because I think it's going to depend on what they decide to focus on with DeMarvion. Because here's the thing: he can come forward as a blitzer. He can drop back as a hybrid type safety because obviously he played safety. He got to get a bit bigger and better against the run, but he'll damn sure try. I tell you that much.
Right.
He's not a guy that's going to shy away from the contact, but he can do a lot of different things. But I remember Dan Quinn saying, "Hey, look, we're going to try a lot of these things out at rookie camp and at OTAs, but that doesn't mean that that's what they're going to do throughout the season. They may not really tap into their full versatility for another year or two. So what if this year DeMarvion Overshown's job is, Jay, we're just going to use you as a sub package rush guy? Then I don't know if Jabril Cox's position is going to be up for grabs. But if it's, hey, we're going to allow you to tap into that coverage ability, right? Bring you in on thirds down, and we can also use you as a blitz guy because you can cover, then yeah, Jabril Cox is in trouble. So if DeMarvion Overshown could handle a bunch of responsibilities year one, I do think he's massive contender. If it's more so, hey, we're putting a lot on this kid's plate, let's just kind of simmer it down to one thing, then maybe it could be a guy like, and we'll get to the next guy, but a Russian, a Fehoko. Instead of bringing Fehoko out there as a rookie, they say, hey, we want more speed, so we're going to rush Overshown with a bunch of linebackers. So I think it depends what they decide to do with Overshown year one.
That's a fantastic point, and because what they decide to do or not do with Overshown is either going to put him in or take him out of Jabril Cox's lane, and that's what's going to dictate just how difficult it might be for Jabril Cox to hold off Overshown, and or how difficult it might be for Overshown to overtake Jabril Cox. But also keep in mind, DeMarvion Overshown, not only is he a rookie, whereas Jabril Cox, though the latter still has something to prove. He's already been with Dan Quinn for a couple seasons or so now. He's already been, gelling with the current players that are still on the Cowboys defense. So he has those legs up as well. He already knows the scheme backwards and forwards. These are things that DeMarvion Overshown has to come in and learn. So when you talk about the mentality of it all, football IQ, Overshown is up there. His football IQ is fantastic.
Yeah.
How quickly can he absorb the playbook and the schematics and then implement that? That's going to be the question mark, because every rookie has a learning curve. Jabril Cox's learning curve is not going to be the same as DeMarvion Overshown. So edge to Jabril Cox there as well.
Trust is the other one too. I'm kind of learning that with Dan Quinn going to his third season. He needs to be able to trust you, definitely at that second level, to be out there. If not, you might see I don't want to use the term Deion Jones because he's a free agent, right? You're allowed to talk about that. Right. So Deion Jones is a free agent. They brought in Anthony Barr last year, Keanu Neal the year before. He likes guys that he can trust out there that are veterans. So if Jabril Cox, hell, we could throw Jabril Cox in there too. If Jabril Cox or DeMarvion Overshown do not gain the trust of him, we might see another linebacker up in there.
Oh, absolutely. Dan Quinn has already shown that he's willing to do two things. One, invest in the youth on his defensive unit, trust in them early, and then rescind that trust if for whatever reason, and then go out into the free agency pool and get him a mercenary until that young guy can kind of come of age, so to speak. So I think that's a 100% great point. And it's really on Overshown to kind of hit the ground running. But at the same time, I don't view him as a bubble guy whatsoever. If in training camp Jabril Cox completely takes the reins at LB3, I don't think that puts DeMarvion Overshown on a roster bubble for the end of August. I think it's just a situation where that's what's expected to happen. And then DeMarvion Overshown would just continue to develop. Because keep in mind, we talk about his versatility. The Cowboys are not looking to pigeonhole him at linebacker anyway. So, much like what they were hoping to do or they're trying to do with a guy like Marquise Bell, for example, the potential that Israel Mukuamu has, but in a different capacity. Jaron Kearse's versatility is what they're seeing in DeMarvion Overshown. So does that put him in the lane of Jabril Cox, or which would be a separate conversation? The second part, does that put him in the lane of Jaron Kearse? And not challenging Jaron Kearse because he's not. But this potential successor to Jaron Kearse in 2-3 years from now. So that's a conversation to be had after we see what Overshown can do with pads on.
Yeah, that particular one, the Jabril Cox and DeMarvion Overshown, I think that's going to be more answer once we get to camp. To be
Absolutely.
honest, we'll know more about it.
Absolutely. Real quick, what this Philadelphia dude, is that the weirdo that you really
Yes, yes,
I,
yes.
I find it kind of interesting that fans of that particular team just they wake
I
up in the morning and they look for Cowboys content to dive into. Shouldn't you be worried about grass? I don't I don't
man,
understand. Like, shouldn't you be still complaining about the grass or something? Like,
I
you
I've
know,
I've been baffled for years that the amount of time they spend in Dallas Cowboys content creators
that's
chats
just wild to me.
doing
I
that.
can honestly
It's
tell you
wild.
that I the only reason I know
Bruh,
what's going on in Philly is because I'm paid to know what's going on in Philly. If you didn't pay me to know what's going on in Philly, I could give two rats
you couldn't pay me
buns.
to
Like
go be in somebody's chat doing this mess here,
I don't
Pat, man.
understand. I don't understand. But I guess they got a lot of time on their hands
They got a lot
because
of time.
I mean, it's not like they're polishing a ring or anything right now. So you know,
Hey, look, man.
I don't know.
I ain't even gonna go into the deep end. For those that was here last year at camp when he called in and tried to troll and he was stuttering over himself. We served him
He
right.
didn't go. He
We
didn't go
served him
full
right.
Harlem Nights. He was the heavyweight champion Harlem Nights.
I said, look,
Get out of
a
here,
good
man.
troll is a good troll. It's not like we
Get
haven't had
out of here.
troll calls before, but man, that
Get
was
out
so
of here.
terrible, dog. Like
Get out
I
of here.
can't even let you get out of here, man.
Get out of here,
Anyway, this next one, I actually in the middle of me making it, and honestly, after I finished it, I was like, damn, did I use the right one? The right players to compare this to? Because I read your article. I believe Dante Fowler was in the article.
man.
And I'm like, man, this makes sense. And also, they do a lot of rotation, but I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway, man. Sam Williams and Dorrance Armstrong.
Mm.
But the
Okay.
note says, should this be Dante Fowler instead?
Yeah, you got I dig it. You do
Yeah,
full clips,
yeah. I brought
full
the clip
clips.
out, bro. I brought the clip
Um,
out.
and it's exactly as I wrote it. The conversation should probably be Sam Williams versus Dante Fowler.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
I don't view it as Sam Williams versus Dorrance Armstrong
Yeah.
for a couple reasons. Now, can Sam Williams get off on that left edge as well? And if so, then that pits him against Dorrance Armstrong as far as behind Tank. But I think the better way to view it would be you look at Dante Fowler, had a resurgent year in his reunion with Dan Quinn in 2022, 6 sacks, I believe.
Yeah.
And that's why they brought him back. But notice they didn't bring him back on a multi-year deal. It's a 1-year re-up, which I think in their minds gives Sam Williams a chance to have a breakout year as soon as this year. But if Sam Williams, for whatever reason, does not have the breakout year, then guess what? You still have him complimenting Dante Fowler and Micah Parsons off of that edge in much of the same way you did in 2022, which was very, very impactful, super disruptive. So it's a win-win in that situation. I think Sam Williams, and I was asked this question recently on the .com, who do I think has the breakout year? And I said 51-49 to Damone Clark. And the reason I said that was because Damone Clark is going to get more reps up front. So he's going to get more opportunity to have breakouts. So with more opportunity tends to come more impact when the potential in the ceiling is there. So Damone Clark's going to be a starter and complement to LVE. Sam Williams is not a starter as we have this conversation, right? So I think Sam Williams can touch 10 quarterback sacks and, 25 disruptions, and he can go off this year. But it's not he versus Dorrance Armstrong. It's versus Dante Fowler. I think if Sam Williams wants to get more action, it's Fowler he has to go through. And he has the potential to do it, but it's not going to be an easy task because we've seen Fowler can be capable as well. So it's not a lose-lose situation. I mean, it's a situation where they can't lose, I should say. That's the best way I want to put it.
Let me push back. Let me talk to you for a second here.
Let me talk. Don't get me started because they didn't let our guy win money in the bank.
But I've been thinking about it though. I'm not as upset as I was initially when it happened, and maybe I could talk to you about it more about that. But I'm not too
another time because that made me feel away, and I know what they're doing. They're setting up so they can disrupt Judgment Day. They want to feud with Finn and
also
and you got
that U.S. title might be something at SummerSlam for LA Knight.
Yeah, man, but our guy not getting any younger. So, but yeah, back to football.
Yeah, I know. See, this is why we need to have a wrestling podcast.
Yeah.
This is why we got to do. So let me push back a little bit. Him going through Dante, as I think you even said this in your article. I don't even know if he'll need to because it seems like Dante Fowler is not going to get a ton of snaps anyway. He only played like 300, something like that, pass rush snaps last year, or totals roughly, where Dorrance played almost 6. It was like 570 something. So when I was thinking about this, I'm like, where can Sam take some snaps away from a guy? Dante Fowler, to me, is still, in my opinion, one of your best pure pass rushers. Like, pure. I'm not asking Dante to go out there and defend the run, but from a pure pass rush standpoint, I think he can still get it done. 6 sacks in probably less than 200 total or 200 some pass rush snaps. So I'm like, where can Sam dig in? And I kept coming back to Dorrance. I'm like, he got the
guy
second
coming off of the career year.
Look, DA has had ascending, right? 6 sacks, 8 sacks. There is production there, no doubt about it. But I can't get away from what Sam Williams potentially can be because I think his ceiling looks much higher.
Nor should you. Nor should you. Everyone who follows me knows, and you can attest to this, I am as high on Sam Williams as anybody walking this planet. I simply am. And do I believe he'll have a breakout season? Yes, I'm already on record saying I believe Sam Williams has a breakout season. But I don't think, let me put it this way. Should Sam Williams prove me and you and his believers right and go on to have a breakout season in year 2, when it's all said and done and you go back and you look at the splits, I venture to say that his breakout season will have had a bigger impact on the number of reps that Dante Fowler did or did not see versus the number of reps Dorrance Armstrong did or did not see. Because when you look at Dorrance Armstrong, what I see the Cowboys doing, particularly if they re-up a second time with him, which will be a third contract. If they give Dorrance Armstrong a third contract, you know what that tells me?
Totally different.
No, you know what that then tells me? It tells me he's the successor to DeMarcus Lawrence. And if he's the successor to DeMarcus Lawrence, then the question no longer becomes, is Sam Williams being groomed to be the successor to DeMarcus Lawrence? Then the question goes right back to, the conversation goes right back to what I was saying, which was, it's Dante Fowler that will be in Sam Williams' way. But then if they don't re-up with Dante Fowler after this year because Sam Williams had the breakout year, then that just ends up proving me right.
But you got a whole lot right there. Because
the science is the science, baby.
Listen.
Yes, science.
I wasn't even thinking about the re-up yet on DA. Because
you got to think about the re-up.
Yeah.
It's time. Yeah. It's time for that conversation to be had again. Quiet as it's kept. There's so many contracts that the Cowboys have to negotiate going into or coming out of this year, but also definitely going forward 2020, next season, and then the offseason after. You got CeeDee Lamb, you got Diggs, Tony Pollard this year. Running out of time, July 17th. It's the deadline for the franchise tag if you're going to get a long-term deal done on Pollard. So you got Pollard, Steele, Diggs, Lamb. By the way, that Lion guy, Micah Parsons, his conversation is coming up probably as early as next year is when you want to start having that conversation. So it's easy to forget that you also have a contract conversation coming up on Dorrance Armstrong, who saved you in the post-Randy Gregory debacle and how that happened. So, yeah, if you're the Cowboys, you want to hold on to Dorrance Armstrong. And again, we'll see how it plays out, because if Sam Williams has a breakout season and for whatever reason that leads them to not re-up with Dorrance Armstrong, well, then you're right.
Well, let me stay there real quick, because you just kind of opened up another can of worms as you were talking about that. Dallas likes to draft. Everybody drafts for the future, right? But they like to draft to protect themselves for the future, if that makes sense. So you take draft picks, you're obviously planning 4 or 5 years to have these guys. But when I look at them taking a guy like Sam last year and then a guy like Fehoko this year, could they potentially be planning for life without DA/D-Law at some point? Because if it's tough, though, because if Fehoko can't get on the field, how do you say have blind faith in Fehoko replacing a Dorrance Armstrong? But we've seen them do that.
They're always protecting. Well, not always. Let's be clear. Right. In the Dan Quinn era,
they try to protect them.
And in the Dan Quinn era, the Cowboys are always trying to put themselves in a position where the successor, the next man up, is always readily identified before the next man up is required to be the next man up. And that's what you really have to love about the Dan Quinn era. So, they would love DeMarcus Lawrence to retire a Cowboy, as would I, as would you, as would most, especially those of us who have gone to bat for him annually to try to remind people of his value,
It's
and they're now
really damn
seeing it,
good.
right? And they're now seeing it. So I hope DeMarcus Lawrence retires a Cowboy, but that doesn't change the conversation that eventually you have to identify the successor. And I think they've done that, because I think Dorrance Armstrong can succeed DeMarcus Lawrence, not necessarily as early as right now, but maybe 2 years from now. I think Sam Williams can be your definitive post Randy Gregory guy, because Micah Parsons is going to be Micah Parsons,
Yes.
right? I don't see Micah Parsons as the post Randy Gregory guy, because I still want him to be the versatile guy. I want him to be the unpredictable wild card. Now we'll see if the Cowboys continue to commit him to defensive end full time, because if so, then I mean Sam Williams has to contend with that as well, and then good luck with that, because no. So Sam Williams, I can't get enough of seeing him play football. I think his future is ridiculously bright. It's a supernova here with the Cowboys. I think that his combination or combining him with Dante Fowler is just great coaching, gives him an opportunity to learn behind Fowler and Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence on that opposite edge, and grow and be better. And I'm hoping he has a breakout year. And if he does, then again, I think it's at the expense of Dante Fowler and not Dorrance Armstrong.
He's going to break rank. It just depends on who the hell that person is.
And he's going to break somebody.
He's going to break. It's happening.
He's going to break somebody.
It's happening, Captain. Slam Williams, man. Fantastic name, by the way.
I like that.
Slam Williams. You know, he dumped my man. And we needed that, because after my man went to Washington and did the whole, jackknife power bomb on somebody from Houston, I'm like, man, I need somebody to slam somebody now, because he should have been slamming people here. So Slam Williams.
I like that. Only thing I'd say is, and although some of those flags were fugazi against Sam, just keep an eye out, because the officials kind of have their eye on you. So,
and we know when they got an eye on you, Connor Williams, they will
target you. I was just about to say, when they're targeting you, because officials target too, when they're targeting you, so if he can eliminate the penalties that he's actually accountable for, because he's going to get called for things that he doesn't do wrong. It's just how it goes.
No,
but I think he'll be fantastic. I mean, he has all pro potential.
Let me say this. I don't mind that Sam Williams is a bit, he got a little tick to him, where Randy.
I don't want him to turn down. That's not what I'm saying.
Right.
I don't want him to turn down whatsoever.
But I don't want him to turn into Randy.
I want him to just be more aware that he's being watched.
Yeah.
So let's make sure that we discern between the two. I don't want him to turn down. It's not necessarily about how can I put this in a very
I know I had to do the same
politically correct way. I'm not asking him to be.
You want him to be a crazy dog. You don't
want.
Yeah,
I'm not asking him to be less crazy. I just want him to understand how to finesse it better, is what I'm saying.
I don't want him to turn into Randy. Y'all remember when Randy would make a dumb boneheaded play post snap, or he'd be offsides? I don't want that. Sam Williams flags were just being too rough.
Good.
I don't turn that down.
It's one of those things where, if a tree falls in the forest and no one is there to hear it, does it still make a sound?
Right.
So it's one of the same logic. Is a criminal because they got caught? So I'll leave it at that.
We Cowboys, we can't be bringing that up.
Oh, don't do that. No, our boys have been clean. Multiple off seasons in a row, knock on wood. So
he ain't with us.
I'm not gonna let you go with that narrative. The Eagles get more rest. But they don't have that conversation. I'll let them get back to trying to complain about the length of the grass blades.
We're gonna talk about that. Let's get to the final one here, man.
Yeah, let's do it.
And this one, I don't really. So a lot of people want to believe that a guy like Kelvin Joseph is going to push some of these other dudes, but Kelvin Joseph, Nashawn Wright, are they contenders to break rank on a guy like a Jordan Lewis, who I look at right now as your fourth guy, but a very dependable fourth guy on your team?
No.
Yeah.
It's no. Much like the conversation of Simi and Jalen, are they contenders to, supplant Michael Gallup? And that answer is no. It's the same weighted.
I think even worse here.
Yeah, even more so, because when you look at this situation, this is Jordan Lewis versus Deron Bland. And that's the conversation to be had as Jordan Lewis. And we'll see if he starts training camp on PUP. There's a 50% chance he will, 50% chance he won't. The Cowboys are leaning heavily toward it. But when I'm speaking with Jordan, he's leaning heavily away from it. So at the end of the day, it's the call of the medical staff, not the player. So, but Jordan is trying to get back on the field. And in his absence, Deron Bland has become him at the nickel. But I'd say this: if we're trying to look for the conversation to be had as far as youth versus incumbent, it's Eric Scott versus Jordan Lewis. It's not Nashawn Wright versus Jordan Lewis. And it's most certainly, I could not be more unequivocal about this. It is not Kelvin Joseph versus Jordan Lewis. It's not Kelvin Joseph versus anyone other than a Nashawn Wright and Israel Mukwamu. It's not even Kelvin Joseph versus Eric Scott. And I'm saying that right now. And Eric Scott hasn't even hit training camp yet. I'm saying that because the Cowboys have so much belief in Eric Scott. And the reason that belief even exists because, domino effect, right? Butterfly effect. If Kelvin Joseph acquits himself properly in the absence of Anthony Brown last year, Eric Scott is not on this team right now.
Yeah.
He's not on this team. So not only do the Cowboys go into the draft saying we need to get a young, hungry corner, they want one so badly that they give up one of next year's picks to move up and get Eric Scott. So Kelvin Joseph has to first get through Nashawn Wright and Eric Scott before he can honestly say he's trying to battle a guy like Jordan Lewis, who's a proven ball hawk, a proven playmaker for the Cowboys in the nickel. And so that's the actual conversation for Kelvin Joseph. And I believe that Kelvin Joseph, we talk about not putting a guy like Overshown on the bubble, which is rightfully so. I don't think that he's a bubble guy. Kelvin Joseph, I believe, is a bubble guy.
Jabril Cox, I think you meant. Is that what you meant?
No, because we were talking about Overshown. I said if Jabril Cox,
because Overshown won't be on a bubble, but
I was saying in that moment that even if Jabril Cox steps into LB3, it doesn't make Overshown's spot on the roster that much more precarious. It does not. That's what I was saying in that moment. But when it comes to, and obviously Jalen Tolbert, I don't even have to say that. He's going to get his chance. He's going to be on this roster this year. He's not going to get cut, even if he bombs in training camp. They're going to try to they're going to try to figure it out. Kelvin Joseph can't say that. Right. If Kelvin Joseph bombs in training camp, I think it's good night, Sally. Nashawn Wright stepped in after the Kelvin Joseph experiment in 2022 went awry, and Nashawn Wright had some downs, but at least he showed some ability to be a starter in pockets, right? And then Israel Mukwamu, when they finally dropped him down the corner in the playoffs, you saw what he was able to do against Tom Brady and that Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense that includes Mike Evans and Chris Godwin in Tampa Bay to help the Cowboys basically just eviscerate the greatest quarterback of all time on his own turf and retire him in the process. So that's the conversation. Jordan Lewis, I think it's Jordan Lewis versus Deron Bland and Eric Scott. And I think that in OTAs and minicamp, because I've seen Deron Bland getting reps on the outside, the Cowboys are actually open to doing that with Deron Bland, which then opens the path for Jordan Lewis to continue to get at least a good number of plays at nickel. Even if it's in a complementary role, we'll see who takes the lead there as the season gets underway. But you have to look at the tier below them to start looking at where Kelvin Joseph, Nashawn Wright, Israel Mukwamu are, because I'm already willing to put Eric Scott at least in that
100%.
Yeah, I would say at least in that gray area that is, because it goes like this. You got Deron Bland versus Jordan Lewis. Below them, you have Eric Scott versus Nashawn Wright. And I want to put Izzy there, but I won't put Izzy there because the Cowboys are just, for whatever reason, hell-bent on labeling him a safety. But then below that, you got Kelvin Joseph trying to get to that higher rung, but those are the guys you have to get through before you even worry about. Don't worry about Jordan Lewis, Kelvin Joseph. Worry about Kelvin Joseph.
There's two things to look at Kelvin Joseph. Kelvin Joseph got benched for guys on the street last year. He quite literally finished the season as your last ranked cornerback on the depth chart. Then to start your workouts, and this is almost a kiss of death to a young player. They're trying to work on a different position potentially, like moving him inside or moving him to safety,
which which is why you asked, is it him versus Jordan Lewis? Because for those that weren't keeping up with, our reports from Steele, from myself, and shame on you if you weren't, through minicamp and OTAs, Kelvin Joseph, they're trying to migrate him to nickel. Well, that shows you that they don't believe in his ability as a boundary guy.
Yeah.
But then you drop him in at nickel where you already have two studs at nickel in DaRon Bland and Jordan Lewis. And then when you look at it in minicamp, Kelvin Joseph, didn't look great. He looked out of position. And you're going to have some tough conversations as far as the roster is concerned. Who are you sacrificing?
I'm
to
not
keep
sacrificing
Kelvin Joseph?
no one.
Who are you sacrificing? Right. Yeah. And I saw someone say, was Kelvin Joseph versus CJ Godwin defensively? If that's the conversation, then Kelvin Joseph's already out. Because CJ Godwin, although he's not a defensive piece, he is a special teams ace on a special teams unit that has now lost two special teamers. Top special teamers in Noah Brown and Luke Gifford. CJ Godwin's not going anywhere. That's why he was brought back in the first place. So, but to our point, if people are saying it's KJ versus CJ, I think you're now reading the writing on the wall there.
Right, exactly. Dig deeper. If we're talking about a second round pick cornerback that was supposed to be your future on the boundary, battling the guy who doesn't even play defense, he's strictly special teams. That should be telling you something, right?
Yeah.
You brought something up though that made me think, and we're talking about DaRon Bland. And one thing I'll say about DaRon Bland, you kind of almost saw it instantaneously in camp where it was like, yo, who's number 30? Like who is that Jordan? Or not Jordan Lewis, who was it? Anthony Brown, because he had number 30 at one point, right? But like, AB, when did he get big? DaRon Bland stood out so much in camp. It got to the point in preseason, honestly. It got to a point where I was like, hey, this dude might be a third best cornerback.
Oh my God. Listen.
Like it was that real. And then Jordan Lewis kind of was going through some of his injuries or whatnot. Then he was out. DaRon Bland came in, had a good game against the Washington football people. And then the rest is history once Jordan Lewis went down. So I'm wondering, because of Eric Scott, who's getting the opportunity with these guys being out, who is showing some growth, could this turn into a DB versus DB versus Jordan Lewis, this year's version, just Jordan Lewis and Eric Scott? Could that happen again?
I don't know that it would happen again, and I'm glad you said this as I kind of glance over at the comments and I see someone saying something I didn't say, but I guess people are coming up. I guess this
live shows, bro. This
yeah. I guess this is Facebook people starting to tap in now.
Yeah.
No, Patrik Walker, and my name doesn't have a C in it, by the way, so get it right. No, Patrik Walker did not say Eric Scott will be a starter in 2023. That's not what I said.
He didn't say any of that.
That's not what I said. But, I mean, if you can't spell my name right, I'm going to assume you didn't hear what I said correctly in the first place anyway.
It's right there on the screen.
It's right there on the screen. Right there. What did Forrest Gump say? But anyway, when it comes to Eric Scott, I believe he has the potential to challenge for reps at the nickel. Absolutely has the potential to challenge for reps at the nickel. Now, that being said, it's still Jordan Lewis versus DaRon Bland. And I love that you brought up how DaRon Bland was such a monster in training camp last year. And it was something that we reported on endlessly and said, hey, man, this guy's something to watch. And then I started asking early in training camp after I saw DaRon Bland making some plays. I'm like, let me dig into this guy a little bit as far as getting some of the coaches' feedback. Let me talk to some of the players. How are these guys feeling about this young guy? Do they really believe he can be that dude? And everybody kept saying, from Dan Quinn to DeMarcus Lawrence to, Trevon Diggs, they kept saying he can be that dude. Jordan Lewis was saying DaRon Bland can be that dude. So then, of course, I'm tweeting this, and people are like, oh, what are you talking about? 5th round pick. If he was so good, why is he a 5th round pick?
Just got to watch.
Now, guess who else is a 5th round pick? Eric Scott. So it seems like the Cowboys kind of know what they're doing when it comes to locating, high impact defensive backs in the 5th round. Now, will Eric Scott turn out to be another DaRon Bland? Who knows? Maybe, maybe not. Don't know. What I can tell you is that he's being set up to have that similar level of success. And now it's on him to put the pads on, put the helmet on, and learn the playbook quickly and acclimate quickly and really try to make some waves. Now, can he make those waves? I believe he can. I've watched his film. I've talked to the guy. And when I asked him directly, what was his biggest takeaway so far from Dan Quinn? And he said Dan Quinn wants him to be a BMF. And we're not talking about the show. We're not talking about big
bad mother. Shut your mouth.
Bad mother. Shut your mouth. Put it on the wallet. right? So he has the right temperament. He has the potential. He has the skill set. And now he just has to apply it. If he does that, yes, he can carve out some reps for himself. Will he be a starter in this year? No. Does he have the potential to maybe down the road push out Jordan Lewis in compliment of DeRon
I mean,
Bland?
he's on a 1-year deal, so Jordan Lewis. So
Right.
let me can I
So
talk
yeah,
to you about that?
does he have that? Does he
Because
have that? He has the potential, yeah. But don't go counting out Jordan Lewis just yet. I can't stress that enough. Like for those that are counting out Jordan Lewis, stop it.
Let me talk to you about. Let me talk to you
Let
again.
me
Real
talk
quick.
to you.
Getting rid of Jordan Lewis? Nah.
Nah.
I don't understand it. There's so many people that are like, oh, well, we'll save $4.2, whatever it is, $1 million. You're trying to win the 6th ring for your franchise that you've been missing for 30 years, right? Almost 30 years. I'm all about collecting the most damn talent and depth I could possibly have to do that. So is there some merit to this? Because I didn't think there was until there was the injury that came, where Jordan Lewis came out and said it himself. It was a Liz Frank, right?
Yeah, it was Liz.
Okay.
Liz Frank.
The Liz Frank was one of the worst that the doctor has seen. Before I saw that, I said, there's no way I'm even thinking about trying to get rid of a damn Jordan Lewis because he's quality depth. But if he does not respond right to the Liz Frank, then I do think it's a fair conversation. But I was very bullish on not getting rid of Jordan Lewis for some damn cap money that you're not going to spend on somebody. You got the cap. Is what I'm getting at.
I'm still there
The
because here's the thing. Let's see what Jordan Lewis can be after suffering this injury. But he's earned the right for us to wait and see what he can be coming off of this injury. Add that to the reality of, I don't think people truly understand how depth works. People look at the piece of paper right now on July 8th, I believe it is, and they say to themselves, "Oh, well, we're deep. We're so deep we can start getting rid of guys. We can cut this guy for cap space. We can trade this guy. Injuries happen. So knock on wood, what happens if you get rid of Jordan Lewis and Eric Scott's not ready yet, and you lose DeRon Bland for several games?"
2022, it happened.
And there you go. So you have to protect against that as well. Camp hasn't even started. Inevitably, somebody is going to get hurt. You never know what position, and you don't want anybody to get hurt, but occupational hazard. So you have to protect against that depth, that you got to protect for that depth issue as well. So Jordan Lewis, there was a time in recent memory, pre-Dan Quinn, and then, of course, again with Dan Quinn, when Jordan Lewis was the only one balling on the defense. He was the only one taking the ball away. He was the only one shutting guys down. And then in the Dan Quinn era, he continued that prior to the injury. So I'm of the mindset, not only from a depth insurance issue, the guy has earned the right to have a chance to get back on the field and challenge to get his job back. And I believe the Cowboys believe that as well, which is why he's still on the roster. And I believe he will be on the roster as long as he responds well when he is allowed to get on the field. I think he'll be on the roster before or throughout the duration of 2023. And really quickly, for someone said, it doesn't matter how you spell the name, it's pronounced the same. Well, so is where, there. So, I mean, either you know how to spell or you don't know how to spell. So you realize that changing the spelling of a word makes it a different word. But okay, yeah. Anyway.
I gotta laugh because y'all gonna realize this ain't the one, man. This ain't the one. But I tell you this. Live shows is different, Pat. It's really tough. It's really tough.
It's fine because for those that don't know, I'm different too. So find out the hard way.
That's what I'm talking about with you. Like find out the hard way.
Find out the hard way.
Because
you finding out the hard way is still easy to me.
Oh, this ain't even hard.
I ain't tripping.
No, I just think it's hilarious, man. I got that hashtag Ask Pat real quick. We'll get a couple more, but I'm glad you kind of see that with me. You got time? I know you ain't got to go to
one more. We got one more.
Got you, man.
Yeah, because I got a personal appointment I got to take care of.
I got you, brother. Let me get to Professor Ozen. Ask Pat. Probably not making the 53 since we're talking about cornerbacks. But how is Miles Brooks, the undrafted cornerback out of LA Tech, La Tech? How's he looking out there?
Looks solid. He looks solid. I want to see more progress from him. There were a couple of times where you could kind of see that, he's a rookie, which is expected, completely expected. I mean, there were times where you saw Eric Scott look like a rookie. But I like Brooks's floor as it stands right now. I think that he has a solid foundation, football IQ wise, skill set wise, and schematically as far as where Dan Quinn would like to put him. So I think Miles Brooks has an opportunity, maybe not to carve into the 53 because this
Practice
defensive
squad.
back room, is deep. But keep in mind, practice squad is still a thing. So I think he has an excellent opportunity to go into training camp, make such a name for himself that it makes him a practice squad guy. Absolutely. Now, of course, that means he'd have to be risked to waivers first. But road is just too tough to hold in front of a guy like Miles Brooks at that position for him to carve himself into the final 53. But absolutely, his floor, his foundation right now looks really strong, really solid. I'm interested to see how he builds on that in training camp. And I believe if he does, then you'd likely see him on the practice squad.
Yeah, and guys, I get it. Every year we get this guy's not going to make it through. And all the time, most of the guys make it through the waivers and they're able to come back on the team.
Right.
Now, if he goes,
Malik Davis shocked us all.
Yeah,
it happens because I was one. We were sitting here saying if you waive Malik Davis if you risk him the waivers to try to get him on the practice squad, somebody's going to snatch him up right then quickly, and not so much. So we all, as much as we study the team and as much as we are people like myself, Steele, KD, Vach, the list goes on and on. As good as we are at doing what we do, we're willing to admit when we just got it wrong, and we thought that Malik Davis was so good that he couldn't be risked to waivers, and we still believe that he's really good. But I use that example to say, don't be surprised if when it's time to get the roster trimmed down, if you see names that you thought wouldn't make it to practice squad, make it to the practice squad. Because the Cowboys, in the Dan Quinn era alone, as far as defensively speaking, they've been able to keep a lot of their guys on the practice squad. They have one of the practice squads that's largely made up of guys that they drafted.
And
when you compare that to some of the when you compare that to the other 31 teams, I think the Cowboys are top 3, maybe even top 2 in that regard. So Miles Brooks definitely has a shot. He just has to get out there and build on what I saw him start out with in OTAs and minicamp.
And all of this competition begins at training camp July 25th, I believe, 24th. You guys fly out ish.
Right. We'll be touching down on the 24th. First practice is that Wednesday, and then the first padded practice is going to be August 1st. So Birdman hand rub, August 1st.
And that's when I'll be down there, which I can't wait. That's when we'll reconvene. Actually, the scientific method is in training camp, and I'm hoping. Obviously, I'll see you down there, but maybe we can do something where we can just do a quick little show right there. I don't give a damn if I pull my phone out, man. But
we'll make it happen. We gotta work against the signal and everything, but we'll make it happen.
Yeah, it's rough down there. But I'm excited for camp, man. This team I think is one of the best in the league, barring any catastrophic injuries. They should definitely be competing, and that competition starts in 22 days.
Yes, sir. And it's going to be something to behold at a lot of different positions. And this is going to be one of the more entertaining and exciting training camps that we've ever seen.
Oh my gosh, the competition is going to be nuts.
From the Cowboys, from a position to position, player to player, head to head matchup. It's the Hunger Games in Oxnard. So may the odds ever be in their favor.
Yes, science.
Then that's the science, man. If you haven't seen Breaking Bad, y'all gotta go watch that. Appreciate you, Pat. Go take care of your business, man. I will see you again at training camp. We'll talk, and it's going to be really exciting. So I'm looking forward to that, brother. Take care.
Absolutely. See you in training camp. See you guys and ladies in Oxnard where the fur starts to fly. Let's get it going. It's time to turn it up.
And that is the Scientific Method, Cowboys Nation. Get fucking. I'm dropping science. Thanks for watching, and make sure to follow and subscribe to A to Z Dallas so you don't miss an episode of the Scientific Method. Every Thursday morning, 9 a.m. Central on Facebook and YouTube, with every episode available on A to Z Sports.com.